It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when I boarded the Greyhound bus from Chicago heading toward Nashville. The bus was nearly empty, a melancholic ride through the gray mist of the Midwest. On the seat next to me, someone had left a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. I waited for a few stops, expecting someone to come rushing back for it. But no one did. Curiosity got the better of me. I unwrapped the cloth to reveal a thick, battered leather journal, its pages yellowed with age and smelling of old tobacco and damp earth. There was no name on the cover, no address to return it to. Just jagged handwriting that filled the pages, speaking of a world that teetered between the sane and the surreal. The author referred to himself only as Major Carter. I don't know who this Major Carter was, perhaps a relic of a bygone era, a man of independent means and peculiar obsessions. People collect stamps, coins, or vintage baseball cards. Major Carter collected ghosts. But he wasn't an exorcist. He didn't want to banish them. He wanted to interview them. He treated the supernatural like rare birds in a sanctuary, traveling to the most God-forsaken corners of America whenever he caught a whiff of a haunting. He even had scouts, private investigators, and shady real estate pickers on his payroll to bring him leads. Reading his journal, it became clear that this wasn't fiction. The detailed accounts of his expenses and the sheer mundanity of his supernatural encounters felt too real. My eyes glued themselves to an entry that seemed to describe his latest and perhaps final adventure. It began with a tip from a scout named Bert Kester. I adjusted my reading light and began to read Major Carter's entry. Entry date: October 14th. Getting into the property was a war in itself. Bert Kester wasn't lying about the isolation, but he failed to mention the jungle guarding the front porch. The house, an old, decaying Victorian mansion somewhere in the deep backwoods of Kentucky, was being swallowed whole by nature. Briars, poison ivy, and wild creepers choked the path. The courtyard looked like the aftermath of a minor earthquake, strewn with shattered bricks and rotting timber. I'm glad I brought my machete. I had to hack through a wall of thorns just to find the front steps. Bravado, I told myself, is the better part of research. I made it to the foyer. The grand staircase spiraled upward, but it was in a sorry state. The wood was spongy with rot, and the banister hung by a thread. I tested the first step. It groaned in protest. I'm not a light man, and the thought of crashing through the floorboards into the cellar wasn't appealing. But Bert Kester had sworn this was the real McCoy. If his tip was solid, I couldn't turn back now. I ascended slowly, testing each foothold. Step by creaking step, I made my way to the second floor. A strange sense of optimism washed over me. Usually, these haunted houses turn out to be nothing more than raccoon infestations or drafty windows. But this place, the air here felt heavy, charged with a static that made the hair on my arm stand up. If the ghost I was looking for wasn't here, he wasn't anywhere. Someone had clearly staked a claim here, and whoever it was, they certainly didn't have a pulse. Or at least, they didn't share the biological necessities of the living. I reached the landing and pushed open the door to the master bedroom. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. The room was furnished, if you could call it that. It was a bizarre parody of domestic life. In the corner, there was a tattered armchair that looked like it had survived a flood, a cracked wash basin, a collection of empty moonshine jars, and a corncob pipe resting on a crate. It looked like a squatter's den, but something was off. The items were ancient, covered in dust that hadn't been disturbed in decades. Yet they were arranged with meticulous care. A squatter, I thought, my mood souring. If some hobo has been living here, my entire trip is a waste. I was about to turn around, ready to give Bert Kester a piece of my mind for sending me to a homeless encampment instead of a haunted house, when a voice, dry as dead leaves, rasped from the shadows. "And just who might you be? Trying to muscle in on my territory?" I spun around. There was no one there. I said, "Who are you? Cat got your tongue?" Then I saw him. Or rather, he materialized. Standing by the window was a withered, spindly old man. He looked like he was carved out of dried walnut wood. He wore a faded, oversized dress shirt that hung off his skeletal frame, and a pair of suspenders holding up trousers that ended high above his ankles. He was holding the corncob pipe I had just seen on the crate. He glared at me with eyes that burned like dying embers. I froze. This was no hobo. The way he shimmered slightly against the afternoon light coming through the Grind Street window gave him away. He took a puff from the unlit pipe, and yet smoke curled out of his mouth. "Well, don't just stand there gaping like a caught fish. Speak up. You think you can just waltz in here and take the best room? I've been holding down this fort since the Hoover administration." He was angry, visibly shaking with rage. He gestured wildly with his pipe, and as he did, the bowl tipped over. Glowing phantom embers spilled out, landing directly on his bare, bony arm and his trousers. I gasped, instinctively reaching out. "Watch out! You're burning yourself!" The old man looked down at the burning embers sizzling on his skin, then looked back at me with a sneer. He didn't flinch. He didn't scream. He simply brushed the fire off his arm as if it were nothing more than lint. "Burning? Ha!" he cackled, a sound like grinding stones. "You're a fresh one, aren't you? How long has it been since you kicked the bucket? A week? 2 days?" He stepped closer, squinting at me. "Look at you. You're still solid. You haven't even shed your shell yet. You're still clinging to that mortal look. Pathetic." My mind raced. I stood there, mouth agape, realizing the magnitude of the misunderstanding. The old ghost thought I was a ghost. He thought I was a newly deceased spirit looking for a place to haunt. He thought my corporeal form, my flesh and blood, was just a shell I hadn't shed yet because I was new to the afterlife. "I asked you a question, rookie," the old man barked, tapping his pipe against the windowsill. "When did you die? You look too fresh. You still smell like soap and fear. We don't get many high society types up here in the sticks. What's the matter? Did you choke on a silver spoon?" I swallowed hard. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a very distinct, living rhythm that I hoped he couldn't hear. This was it. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. If I played my cards right, I wouldn't just observe a ghost. I would be accepted by one. I could learn the secrets of the other side straight from the source. But I had to be careful. One slip-up, one sneeze, one beat of a pulse, and the charade would be over. I straightened my jacket, forced a stiff, unnatural smile, and decided to improvise. "Recently," I lied, trying to make my voice sound hollow. "Very recently. Still getting the hang of floating." The old man narrowed his eyes, studying me. Then his face cracked into a toothless grin. "Figured. You got that confused look. Well, don't think you're taking the master bedroom. I'm Basil, Uncle Baz to the locals, and I run this joint." I turned the page of the weather-beaten journal with trembling fingers. The narrative was becoming impossible to put down. Major Carter was standing in a ruined bedroom, face to face with a spectre named Uncle Baz, pretending to be a ghost himself. It was a scenario so absurd, yet so terrifying, that I could almost hear the floorboards creaking through the handwriting. Entry date continued. My heart was doing somersaults against my ribs, but I forced my face into a mask of bored indifference. I had spent a lifetime chasing the paranormal, dreaming of a moment like this. Now it was handed to me on a silver platter, provided I could keep up the charade. Uncle Baz, the translucent, cantankerous old spirit, seemed to have bought my lie hook, line, and sinker. He thought I was a fresh ghost, one who hadn't yet shed his mortal coil, or as he called it, his shell. "So," Baz grunted, shuffling around the room with a peculiar floating gait, "you plan on sticking around? Or are you just passing through to the other side?" "I was thinking of settling down," I improvised, trying to keep my voice devoid of breath. "Looking for a quiet spot." Baz let out a dry, rattling laugh. "Quiet? You picked the right place, rookie. Folks around here know better than to trespass on Uncle Baz's property. But you..." He squinted at me again, his eyes glowing like fireflies in a jar. "You're still too solid. You're walking heavy. You gotta learn to glide, son. Glide." He demonstrated by drifting a few inches off the floor, his tattered trousers hovering over the dust. I nodded sagely. "I'm working on it. It's a hard habit to break, gravity." "You'll get there," Baz dismissed, waving his hand. He then pointed to the corner of the room where the pile of junk lay. The moonshine jugs, the rusted banjo, the old blankets, and the corncob pipe. "Now tell me, what do you make of my setup?" I looked at the collection. In part 1, I had assumed it was the debris of a homeless squatter. Now I knew better. It looks domestic, I ventured carefully. Why do you keep it? Nostalgia? Can't let go of the old creature comforts. Baz's face twisted into a look of mock offense. Nostalgia? Do I look like a sentimental old fool to you? Do you think I keep this trash because I miss the taste of corn liquor or the twang of a banjo? I don't have lungs to smoke, and I don't have a stomach to fill. Then why? It's a trap, you numbskull. It's theatricals. Baz cackled, rubbing his bony hands together. The sound was like dry twigs snapping. It's psychological warfare. You see, the living are like rats. Once they find a hole, they don't want to leave. If I just rattled chains and moaned, they'd call a priest or one of those television ghost hunters. I don't want the attention. He floated over to the pile and kicked a moonshine jug. It rolled silently. Ghostly physics at work. So, I set the stage, Baz explained, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. When a vagrant or a curious teenager breaks in, they see this stuff. They think, oh look, another person is living here. A hobo maybe. It makes them feel safe. It makes them feel like they've found a buddy. They let their guard down. They sit on that crate, maybe try to light that pipe. And then? I asked, genuinely fascinated. And then, Baz grinned, widening his mouth unnaturally. I give him the full show. Just when they get cozy, thinking they're sharing the room with a harmless squatter, bam! I drop a burning coal on their lap. Or I manifest right in front of their noses, looking like this. The transformation was instantaneous and horrifying. One moment, Baz was a withered old man. The next, his skin seemed to retract. His jaw unhinged and dropped to his chest. His eyes bulged out of their sockets, dangling by optic nerves, and his ribs tore through his shirt like jagged knives. He let out a silent scream that echoed psychically in my brain. It took every ounce of my willpower not to scream back. My survival instinct screamed at me to run, to jump out the window, to use the machete I had hidden in my coat. But I froze. I was Major Carter, the seasoned investigator. I couldn't blow my cover now. I swallowed a lump of terror and forced a polite nod. Very impressive, Baz. That's quite the look. Baz snapped back to his normal, grumpy self in a blink. It usually does the trick. I've seen grown men wet themselves and dive through closed windows. They run so fast, they don't stop till they hit the state line. And they never, ever come back. That's how you keep a property value down, kid. He floated closer, looking at me with newfound respect. You didn't flinch. Not bad for a rookie. Most fresh spirits are squeamish about the gory stuff. I've seen a lot, I said, my voice barely a whisper. So, you hate humans that much? Hate him? I don't hate him. I just don't want him near me, Baz spat. They're noisy, they're messy, and they're always trying to fix things. Oh, let's knock down this wall. Let's paint over this mold. Bah! I like the mold. It adds character. Besides, once you fully shed that shell of yours, you'll understand. Humans are suffocating to be around. They suck the energy right out of the room. He paused, tilting his head. Say, what did you do before you kicked the bucket? You got that look of a man who pushed a pencil. I thought quickly. In the original text, the character was a muhuri, a law clerk. I needed an American equivalent that fit the dynamic. I was a paralegal, I lied. Worked in a law firm downtown. Contracts, deeds, that sort of thing. Baz's eyes lit up. A legal man. I knew it. We're birds of a feather, you and I. And you? I asked. What was your trade? I was a land agent, Baz declared proudly. A real estate shark. I sold swampland to city slickers and haunted houses to newlyweds. I knew the value of dirt better than anyone in Kentucky. My name was Basil, but back then they called me Bauer Baz. I could sell ice to an Eskimo. And now? Now I protect my own investment. I'm the squatter, the landlord, and the security guard all rolled into one. He slapped me on the shoulder. His hand felt like a bag of ice cubes. You stick with me, kid. I'll teach you the ropes. I've been looking for a partner, someone with a legal mind to help me figure out how to haunt the new developers if they ever try to bulldoze this place. We can be a team. Baz and Carter, Hauntings Inc. Has a ring to me, don't it? I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my temple. This was getting out of hand. I had successfully infiltrated a ghost's lair, but now he was offering me a job. I'd be honored, Baz, I said. But I think my shell is itching. I might need to sit down. Yeah, the shedding phase is itchy, Baz sympathized. Go on, take a load off. Sit on the crate. But watch out for the splinters. They don't hurt us, but they're annoying. I sat down gingerly on the wooden crate. My mind was racing. I was recording every word in my memory to write down later. This was going to be the magnum opus of my career. The Predator's Guide to the Afterlife. I had the source right here. All I had to do was keep playing the part of the dead paralegal. But there was a problem. A physical, biological problem. The house was dusty. Ancient pervasive dust hung in the air, kicked up by Baz's theatrical stomping and the shifting of old fabrics. It tickled my nose. It irritated my throat. I felt a tickle deep in my nostrils. A sneeze. A sneeze is a violent, explosive act of the living. Ghosts don't sneeze. They don't have diaphragms to convulse. They don't have lungs to fill with air. If I sneezed, the game was up. Baz would know instantly that inside this shell was a living, breathing, intruding human. I pressed my finger under my nose, desperate to suppress it. What's wrong? Baz asked, eyeing me suspiciously. You look like you're having a seizure. Just Adjusting to the atmosphere, I choked out, my eyes watering. Well, get used to it, Baz said, turning his back to me to fiddle with his corncob pipe. We got a long eternity ahead of us. I was thinking, maybe tomorrow we can go down to the cellar. I got some rats down there I've been training to form a choir. It's terrifying. While Baz rambled on about his rat choir, I fought the battle of my life. My chest heaved. My eyes burned. The dust was relentless. I needed to get out. I needed to leave before my body betrayed me. But how do you excuse yourself from a partnership with a ghost? And then I heard a sound from outside. A twig snapping. Footsteps. Heavy, clumsy footsteps on the front porch. Baz froze. He spun around, his face shifting from friendly mentor back to the demonic guardian. "Did you hear that?" Baz hissed. "Something's out there. Something alive." He floated toward the door, his fingers extending into claws. "Stay here, rookie. Watch and learn. I'm going to go scare the living daylights out of whoever thinks they can set foot on Uncle Baz's porch." He vanished through the wall, leaving me alone in the room. I gasped for air, finally able to breathe, but the dust was already deep in my system. I grabbed my journal and my pen, scribbling furiously, trying to capture the conversation before the madness continued. I thought I was safe for a moment. I thought I could just slip away while he was busy. But fate, as it turns out, has a wicked sense of humor. And my nose wasn't done with me yet. I sat on the Greyhound bus, gripping the leather journal so tightly my knuckles turned white. Outside the window, the flat plains of Indiana were whizzing by, but my mind was stuck in that dusty, decaying room in Kentucky with Major Carter. I could feel his desperation through the ink on the page. He was a man on the verge of the greatest paranormal discovery in history, undone by the most human of reflexes. Entry date, October 14th. The final entry. The silence in the room was deafening after Uncle Baz floated through the wall to deal with the intruder. I was alone. Just me, the flickering shadows, and the dust. Lord, the dust. It wasn't just dirt. It felt like pulverized history, ground up limestone, and dry rot entering my nasal passages. I pinched my nose. I held my breath until my lungs burned. I bit my lip until I tasted copper. I had to hold it in. If I sneezed, the vibrations alone would give away my corporeal form, let alone the noise. I was supposed to be a shell that hadn't shed yet, but even fresh ghosts don't hyperventilate. Minutes felt like hours. From outside, I heard a high-pitched scream. Probably a local teenager daring their friends to touch the porch, followed by the satisfying sound of scrambling feet and a car peeling out of the dirt driveway. Baz was efficient. I'll give him that. Moments later, Baz drifted back through the wall. He looked smug. He dusted off his spectral hands, looking pleased with himself. Kids these days, Baz grumbled, floating back to his crate. No respect for private property. I had to pull the headless horseman routine just to get them off the lawn. You should have seen them run, rookie. One of them dropped his smartphone. I hate those things. Flashlights were bad enough, but those glowing rectangles represent everything wrong with the living. He looked at me, expecting praise. Well, did you hear them scream? That's the music of success, my boy. I nodded frantically, my face turning a shade of purple that no amount of spectral acting could hide. I couldn't speak. The pressure in my sinuses was building like a steam engine ready to blow. What's the matter with you? Baz floated closer, his brow furrowed. You look congested. You're vibrating. Is this part of the shedding process? You know, when I died, I felt a bit lightheaded, but I didn't turn beet red. I shook my head violently, waving him away. Just go away, I pleaded mentally. Turn around. You know what you need, Baz continued, oblivious to my agony. You need to focus on the ether. Forget the body. The body is just a memory. Let go of the itch. It's all in your mind. Or what's left of it. It was no use. The tickle had moved from a minor annoyance to a volcanic inevitability. My diaphragm spasmed. I gasped. You what? Baz leaned in, his hollow eyes curious. And then it happened. The sneeze to end all sneezes. It wasn't polite. It wasn't quiet. It was a thunderous, wet, full-bodied explosion of biology. Achoo! The sound echoed off the rotting floorboards, bouncing around the empty house like a gunshot. And I didn't stop there. Once the dam broke, the flood followed. Achoo! 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 I doubled over, gasping for air, clutching my heaving chest. Tears streamed down my face. When I finally looked up, wiping my nose with a very real, very physical handkerchief, I froze. Uncle Baz was staring at me. But the look on his face wasn't anger. It wasn't the demonic fury he showed the intruders. It was pure, unadulterated horror. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Bless you, Baz whispered, confused. Then his eyes locked onto the handkerchief. He saw the moisture. He heard the ragged intake of breath. He heard the undeniable pump, thump, thump of my heart hammering against my ribs. Wait a minute, Baz stammered, backing away, floating higher toward the ceiling. That wasn't a phantom sneeze. That was wet. You're breathing. You're heaving. Baz, wait. I can explain. I wheezed, standing up. Stay back! Baz shrieked. His voice went up an octave, losing all its scary gravel. You're one of them. You're a breather. You're a meat sack. I'm just an investigator. I just wanted to talk, I shouted, stepping forward. A human! Baz screamed, panic radiating from his transparent form. You tricked me! You invaded my sanctuary! Oh, the horror! The germs! The noise! The mortality! Baz, please, I'm not going to hurt you. That's what you all say. Next comes the holy water, then the sage, then the reality TV cruise. Baz was hyperventilating now, or at least mimicking the panic of it. I can't deal with the living. You people are relentless. You're suffocating! Get away from me! I just want to document your story. Get out! Get out! Or I'll leave. I mean it. The irony was paralyzing. The terrifying spirit who chased grown men away with burning coals was cowering in the corner because I had a pulse. He wasn't scary. He was an introvert who just wanted to be left alone. Baz. No! No more! I'm compromised. The perimeter is breached. With a final ear-splitting shriek of terror, Uncle Baz didn't attack. He didn't turn into a monster. He simply imploded. He gathered himself into a tight ball of light and shot up through the chimney like a reverse lightning bolt, vanishing into the grey Kentucky sky. "Baz!" I yelled, running to the fireplace. But he was gone. The house fell instantly silent. The heavy static charge in the air dissipated. It was just an empty, dirty room again. The magic was gone. I stood there for an hour, calling his name. I tried to apologize. I tried to sneeze again to see if it would bring him back. Nothing. Just the wind whistling through the broken eaves. I had ruined it. The greatest interview of the century, the proof of the afterlife, destroyed by a dust mite. The writing in the journal became frantic after that. Major Carter described tearing the house apart, looking for any sign of Baz. He camped out there for 3 more days, but the house was dead. Truly dead this time. No footsteps, no voices, no flying embers. Uncle Baz had moved on to a new hideout, somewhere safe from the terrifying presence of the living. The last page of the journal was torn in half. The final legible sentence read, "I realized then that they don't haunt us because they want to hurt us. They haunt us because they are trying to keep us away. We are the monsters under their bed. We are the loud, messy, chaotic nightmare they can't wake up from. I found the truth, but I lost the friend. If anyone finds this journal, please." The rest of the sentence was missing. I closed the weather-beaten leather journal. The bus was pulling into the Nashville terminal. The brakes hissed, jarring me back to reality. I looked at the bundle in my lap. Major Carter, whoever he was, had vanished into obscurity, just like Uncle Baz. Was he crazy? Was this the ramblings of a madman who broke into an abandoned house and hallucinated a conversation with a dust cloud? Or was it the only true account of the other side we would ever have? I waited at the station for an hour, hoping a frantic man in a trench coat would come running looking for his lost diary. No one came. I eventually published the account in a small paranormal magazine, changing the names, hoping the real Major Carter might see it and reach out. I wanted to know what happened next. I wanted to know if he ever found Baz again. But no one ever called. The claim check for the journal remains unclaimed. As I walked out into the cool Nashville night, I lit a cigarette and watched the smoke curl up toward the stars. Somewhere out there, in some forgotten attic or crumbling basement, I like to think Uncle Baz is sitting on a crate, smoking his phantom pipe, safe and sound, far away from the sneezing, breathing, living nightmare that is us.